guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in the studio I thought I'd show you how to make these lovely little Dorset button brooches which have got little trees on them. I've got one there with some little beads in it, and this one here has got a fancy edge on it, and I've used French knots here. So if you pop back in a moment, I'm going to set up and hopefully show you how to do your own Dorset button. Right, so to get started on our Dorset button, I like to use these lovely perlé threads which are available from most embroidery shops and places like Hobbycraft. You do need to work with quite a long length of thread, so I've made this one in a green, so I have threaded up my needle. Well, I will have threaded my needle up with. Can you see this? Look, there's masses of it. You want about 3 meters of thread to do one Dorset button with, and it is a bit of a pain because you have to pull it through every time you want to make a stitch on the ring that we're going to use in a moment. You've got to pull 3 meters through, but you don't want to be stopping and starting. You don't need a knot, and then the next thing you need is you need one of these rings. Now it could be an old brass curtain ring, it could be something that I've had for a dream catcher, and it could be some plastic rings which you can buy also from embroidery shops. Now to get started, this is the most common thing that people get wrong. We're not going to tie it on here, although some people do. It's whatever you decide is easy for you. So I've laid my piece of thread along the edge of the ring, and then I'm going to put my fingers over it. Let that thread that's part of the 3 meters drape over the back of your fingers, and then come up through the ring and under the thread, and then of course you've got to pull that 3 meters of thread through, which could take me a while. There we go, and there's my first stitch there. So I'm still, if I let go of that, it will come undone. So just hold on to that a little bit longer. Put it back over your finger again. Bring the needle up through the ring and under the thread. And once you've got about 3 or 4 of these on, and you can see it gets all sort of silly because it gets caught around everything and anything. And the second stitch will be a lot better, and slide that up and give it a pull, and you get like this lovely bump on the edge of your ring here. So over your fingers again, up through the middle of the hoop. It does get more comfortable as you do this, and again pull your 3 meters through, and you're going to work your way all the way round that ring. It will look like this, so you can see, look, I've gone all the way round and your whole ring is covered. Now you have options at this point. You can either keep this lovely bump to the buttonhole in on the outside edge, but traditionally what they would have done was they would have twisted that round to the back. So I'm just going to twist that round, and it slides on the ring, so it's quite easy to do. Right, there we go. So we have this effect now. Right, so first of all we need to put the spokes in for our tree. Now they're not the same as the original Dorset buttons, but there is another YouTube video up there, and if you want to know how to do one of those, then please do look it up and it will explain how to do that for you. This one I'm going to put my tree on, and I need a sort of V section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come from the back, and I'm going to come over my Dorset button down to the bottom and keep it in the centre, and then I'm going to fan out to one side, back to the centre, fan out and back to the centre. Then I'm going to come up onto the other side, fan out and back to the centre, fan out and back to the centre. So I've got about 5 little sort of branches there. If you want more, you just add more, but you need to keep the tension on these. So that's what you're looking at. It should be like that, and you notice my thumb is on this part here, because if you don't keep the tension, this will all go sort of loose, and then it will all move and you won't be able to do it. Now with the, you can see, look, I've not got much thread left, but I can change it at this point, but I don't want to do it quite yet. I want to get this all secured first. So I'm going to go round the bottom of the ring, and I'm going to come up to the side, across the bottom of the threads and down on the other side. And as I pull this stitch, it will pull in, and you will get the beginnings of the sort of the trunk of the tree. Now, I do use this finger on the back to keep the pressure on so that I can actually wrap it. So up on the other side, back down on that side, and then give it a nice pull. Then come back up on this side, down on the other side, and give it another pull. And what should be happening is you should be, and you do sometimes have to help it, so get in there, and that's it. We want them to sit nice to that. See, can you see what's happening when you pull that? So now that I've got that, I can turn it around the other way, and I can actually really hold that between my fingers. And it depends how sort of long you want the trunk of your tree to be, or it not necessarily a tree, it could be a bouquet. Depends how you're viewing it. But I'm going to put several on there, and I'll show you in a minute. Whoops, now you see, look, I've got it caught round there, so you have to be very careful. But hopefully, I know you can't see it at the moment because my fingers are holding the tension, but in a moment I will show you. Right, now there you go. Can you see that? Got a little wispy bit there that I just need to cut off with my scissors later. But we've now got this sort of wrapping here that's wrapped around all of the bottoms of those spokes and given us a trunk to our tree. So at this point, it would be advisable for me to actually put on a new length of thread. And to do that, what I would do is I would run my thread down through the back of these stitches. And you might have to swap to a sharper needle, but just give me a moment. Aha, there we go. So I've pulled that down through there. I've got to the bottom, and just at the back here, I'm going to do a couple of sort of just little stitches. It does take a bit of, you know, bit brute force and ignorance to get in amongst the stitches, which is why in the beginning it would have been better to make sure we got the right length of thread for the job. There we go. Now I can cut that off neatly, and now I'm ready to tie on a new bit of thread to do what comes next. So pop back in a moment and I'll just set up for that. Right, so here we go. I've attached on a new thread, so I've got plenty of thread here to do the next bit. Now all you need to do is I tend to turn the tree round so that the trunk is here in front of me and I can see where I'm working. And then all we're going to do is we're going to go down through one set of bars, and we're going to weave. So we're going to come up through the next set, down through the next, up through the next, and down. Now I'm at that end of that side, so I just take the thread round the back and I come up through the next one, down through the next one, and you keep repeating this so that you're actually wrapping over the threads and weaving through them. You can probably see that coming now. And you don't need to pull it too tight, but you need to be firm with it. Or at least, what I should say is settle them down on those spokes. Now, this will be my third time, so over this one. It will show you, as you do it, you'll be able to see which one you should be going over and which one you should be going under. So, oops. Yep, so down through that one. And you're weaving backwards and forwards through those spokes that you've put on there. And if you keep going, what you will do is you will build up a sort of a woven basket effect. So down through that one. And you can go as high as you like. Oops. A lot of the time it's what's annoying is trying to hold on to the ring, keep the tension on everything with your fingers, try not to pick up any other thread from anywhere else on the table, and keep your patience more than anything. So if you're not feeling patient on the day you decide to do one of these, I'd leave it alone. Come back to it another day, because it can be very frustrating when you have to keep sorting out all your threads that you're using. But you can see, hopefully, that that is coming. And I just keep going backwards and forwards across those spokes. Don't pull it too tight, but firmly put them into place, and you will build up that lovely basket effect, which you can see coming now. And then what you will get is you will get this effect here. So can you see that lovely basket effect that you're getting there? And I've taken that right the way up to the top of the Dorset button, underneath all these French knots which I've put on here. And once you've got to the top, or you don't have to go all the way to the top, you may decide that you want to sort of stop halfway down here. But I like going to the top, because then I've got a fabric underneath to put my French knots into on my beads. So as you can see, I've been weaving backwards and forwards now for a couple of minutes, and I've built up this lovely fabric, which is like the basket of my posy, or it is the bark on my tree. And to finish, all I need to do is get to a point where I can get down to the back of my button, and then I've just gone over there, and now what I'm going to do is turn over to the back, and I'm going to run my needle through the back of my weaving stitches, making sure that I'm not affecting the front. Pull my thread through, and then I'm just going to make sure I've got the right thread so I know what I'm cutting, and clip that off. Okay, and we've now got the part of our button that we can actually use to put some French knots on. So now you need a contrasting thread, or you might want beads or sequins. I've chosen to use this lovely yellow thread here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do some French knots into this basket to suggest the flowers either in a posy or the blossom on a tree. Now you will need to start with a little knot, of which you're going to clip the tail off later. So we're going to come in from the back, and we're going to use this as a fabric, and I'm going to try to come up between some of the fibres of my thread. Now you can't pull this too tight, so I'm going to clip that little bit off at the back there, and now I'm ready to do some French knots. Now these are cheats French knots, which basically means that rather than your standard once round and through your fabric, we're going to go 2 or 3 times round, and then I'm going to pop my needle back through the back, and I'm going to pull my thread through, and I will get this cluster, okay, which is sort of rings that have been collected there. It's not a true French knot, but I don't mind because that adds texture. Then I'm going to move along, and I'm going to come up somewhere else, and I'm going to pop in another one, and again needle, wrap the thread round several times, and then back through to the back. But don't pull too hard, because we don't want to lose the French knot through to the back. And you can work your way along there. It's quite fiddly because you're trying to hold on to such a small thing. So maybe if I put it down on the table, you might be able to see a little bit more. 1, 2, 3, and then through your fabric. And you get all these little bumps and coils of cheats French knots. If I did a proper French knot on there, it would be very tiny, and I'm likely to pull it through to the back of my work, which will not give me the effect I want. So I've worked my way across there. And there you have it. I have my first little row of French knots on there. Now I've stopped my weaving short. Now I can actually use these bars if I want to, because I can actually split the threads let's try over here first. I can split the threads and actually do French knots on those bars. It's all very delicate and careful now because we don't want to pull too tight. So there we go, that one's on there, and you're just kind of using what we've got on there as a fabric to hold these French knots. It's harder when you don't take the weaving all the way to the top, because obviously you've then got these bars which you have to still try and embroider on, but it's doable with a little bit of patience. There you go. Now if they do go through to the back, just pop them through, and you can see there that our little posy is coming. And then this one here, I worked the weaving all the way to the top, so I can actually do my French knots on the woven fabric behind. I can also use the edging around here to put my French knots into. Anything that I can catch up with the needle will help me get French knots on there. But there are other things you can do. You can put a combination in. So here on this one, we have a combination of French knots in different colours, and as you get more and more French knots on, you will also be able to come up through the first French knots and do French knots on top of them. So you're building almost like a crustacean of knots on top of that basic woven fabric. And then I've gone in afterwards with some little beads, and I've put some beads in as well. And of course you can bead the edge, because once you've done all this stitching, you can change to a beading needle, which is a much finer needle, and then you can actually just catch up the edge of the thread that's wrapping the ring, and you can put on all your beads around the edge, which is a really lovely look. And of course we've got another one over here where we've got pink beads, and I've used quite a dark beading thread there, which if you're accurate and neat enough, that looks quite nice with the beads, and a few beads in there as well. And of course then using the same sort of idea, you can work your way onto much bigger. This is a bangle, so that was started off as something like this, and I've wrapped the bangle in exactly the same way. And this time, instead of doing my spokes just in the middle, I've done 2 sets of spokes on either side, and then I've actually woven in and out of the spokes to create this sort of thicker tree stem here, and then woven quite freely, I didn't quite know how that was going to work, my trees on each side, and then gone back in with my French knots. And I've done all this for the blossom, and I've got all the lumpy green bits down here which suggest the foliage in the woodland. And you know, that looks really lovely. And of course what you could do is you could actually pop a miniature picture behind here, so it looked like you were looking through the trees at a little picture that you've drawn behind. So there's lots of things you can do with it. There's another one there, and again all the bottoms here have been woven to suggest trees in a forest, lots of French knots, and this one's got a little sort of loop at the top, which you could hang that up as a decoration. So there you have it guys, how to make a little Dorset button bouquet and your Dorset button trees. Hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed showing that to you. Please like, subscribe, comment, tell me whether you liked it or not, what you want me to do in the future.